one.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the DFW Super Bowl Day live stream on the policy differences between Andrew Yang and Joe Biden. Hexel, do you have anything to add before we jump into this?
Hey everyone, yes, so this is another exciting episode. Today we are answering questions that you might encounter when you are talking to someone who is leaning towards Joe Biden or currently supporting Joe Biden. As we're in the final home stretch for Super Tuesday states, and as we actually anxiously watch the results of the Iowa caucus tomorrow, we really want to step up our game and make sure that we are trying to convert as many people as possible. And so we are going to start off this series of workshops with answering how do we tackle questions surrounding Joe Biden. And we wanted to start off with basically three areas. Number one, how Biden and Yang compare on the economy. Number two, how they compare on healthcare. And number three, how do they compare when it comes to their odds of beating Trump?
Ooh, actually, can I speak on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Kennedy. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the policy highlights on top of you.
So the reason that we're asking these three questions here is because in a recent poll of Democratic issues, these were the big three. Actually, beating Donald Trump was the number one issue. I think 40% of Democrats agreed that was their number one thing that they were concerned about, and the other two were about tied at like 8 or 9%. So that's the reason we're going through these and comparing the policies on Biden and Yang over those.
Awesome. So I think, since beating Trump is the biggest concern, and we even see this when we phone bank, when we ask the question, what's the most important issue for you? A lot of them choose beating Trump. So why don't we start with that? So the first question is, why is Yang better positioned to beat Trump than Biden?
You do get this phone banking, and actually when I went canvassing yesterday, I had a really long conversation with a woman who, she literally was like, I just want Trump out. I would vote anyone over Trump. And so you'll find when you're canvassing or phone banking or just talking to family members that is their number one issue, and they're usually undecided about who to pick. So when we talk about Andrew Yang and how he can beat Trump, I would always answer that question with, look at 2016. And there's two parts of 2016 that we can look at. And so you can talk about the general election and say those people who voted for Donald Trump at that time wanted someone who could promise them change, wanted someone who was not an establishment candidate like Hillary Clinton. And even though Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, she lost the Electoral College. And how you win the Electoral College is you need to get a lot of those Midwest states. And those Midwest states just frankly do not see the benefit of voting for someone who's establishment, who has no plan to really help their crumbling infrastructure and lack of jobs. So when someone says, why is Yang a better choice of beating Trump than Biden? All you have to say is Biden is the number one establishment candidate that's up on this round in 2020. And to even further that, you can look at the primaries of 2016. Because if you remember the Republican primary, it was like, well, obviously they're going to put up an establishment candidate like Jeb Bush or like Ted Cruz, and they didn't. The primaries won by Donald Trump. And again, it's these Midwest states that will win you the Electoral College. Those are the people that will help Yang win the election against Donald Trump, and they will not vote for an establishment Democrat. Do you have anything to say on that, Hexel?
No, that's pretty good. So I think you really touched on it, which is ultimately that Biden's got a lot of things going for him. He's got a lot of experience, especially a lot of foreign policy experience. He has experience in the Obama White House. But as we saw in 2016, Hillary Clinton ran on a platform of basically continuing what Obama started, right? And Biden's platform is basically going back to the days of Obama. And in as much as, that would be a lot better than what we have now, if you're looking at who's likely to beat Trump, you still have a lot of Trump supporters who, despite all the bad things that have happened in the last 4 years, they're still convinced that Trump, is good for the economy and a host of other things. And so you have to have something more to offer than just going back to Obama time. And going back to Obama time doesn't fix the reasons that Donald Trump got elected in the first place. and that's what Andrew Yang has to offer. And so, if you are talking to Trump supporters, like imagine if Biden was the nominee, and then now you have to change your game to not convincing other Democrats, but convincing other independents and Republicans, then, how are you going to convince them that the things that they liked in Trump are President Biden? Versus if you imagine if Yang's the nominee, there's a lot of things you can point about in Yang that will appeal to the other side, like the fact that he's an entrepreneur, the fact that he's not a career politician, the fact that he's bringing in new ideas and he's going to shake up how this country fundamentally works. And so I think we've touched on it. Yeah.
Could you, in 60 seconds, give
yes,
a big
we
overview
could do
on
that.
Actually,
so
if you just do it on yours, I can hold up the timer here.
You can actually hold it up over there.
Over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, you want to ask me the question?
Yes. Hexel.
Yes.
Who has a better shot at beating Trump, Joe Biden or Andrew Yang?
Well, if you go to yang2020.com and check out Andrew Yang's policies, you'll see a lot of things that Andrew Yang does to solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. The truth is, Joe Biden has a lot of things going for him: experience, foreign policy, association with Obama. But ultimately, in 2016, the voters made a decision. They did not want another establishment candidate. They didn't want to continue on what Obama started. That's what Hillary Clinton offered. And the voters voted against that in 2016, or at least the people in the key states voted against that. And we need something more than just continue what Obama started. Andrew Yang's providing solutions that solve the problems that got Donald Trump elected in the first place. And he has a lot to offer that the people on the other side actually enjoy, like the fact that he's not a career politician or the fact that he's not establishment. And so Yang has a better chance of beating Trump because he has what Trump supporters have always wanted.
Okay, you just coming in at a minute.
Yeah, they're right at the cusp.
Still a little. Okay, yeah, that's really good.
I could have made it a little shorter, but
yeah, we always try to plug the website and say like go to Yang.
I did do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
first thing I did.
sorry.
You want to switch it around?
Yeah, that was good. Here, I'll give it a.
All right.
I'll give it a shot.
All right, so Kennedy.
Yes.
Joe Biden is very popular. Why do you think Andrew Yang has a better chance of beating Trump than Biden?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, Hexel. So if you go to yang2020.com, you'll actually see why Andrew Yang is one of the Democrats with the most support from Republicans, independents, and other voters that we just haven't seen come out since 2016. Because his policies, they tend to cross those bipartisan lines, and they tend to bring in moderates and centrists who don't want to affiliate themselves with an establishment party like the Democrats or the Republicans. It would rather have an outsider come in and make real change. And if you remember the 2016 election, which I'm sure we all do, it was a big surprise to see all these establishment candidates falling. But just frankly, looking at the Midwest and all of the states that we need to win the general using the Electoral College, Andrew Yang has the best shot at that because he's not establishment. He's speaking directly to the needs of those people, and his solutions directly inject ways to solve those problems. That's my spiel on it.
Nice.
And
right at 57 seconds.
And again, I feel like we haven't talked on Joe Biden, and part of it is like we're not here to just rag on every other Democratic candidate, and so it is hard because I don't want to just say like, well, Andrew Yang would win because Biden is smelly, and I don't know, and it's better to push for Yang instead of to tear down Biden. But again, I guess it's part of the policy workshop that we're doing.
Well, also, I think something that I tried to do when I took on this question was just acknowledge the fact that him having experience and him having establishment, it's not really a bad thing. I think one thing we need to be very clear about is I think we should stop treating people being establishment candidates, because ultimately that is an asset when it comes to getting certain things done. So we really want to and so when we say that Biden has the most experience and the most establishment more than any other candidate, I think it's something I try to do is really begin with the frame of mind that that's a good thing. And that's why a lot of Biden supporters support him, because he does have a wealth more experience than other people. It's just not something that's going to help him beat Trump. And this good thing may work against him when it comes to, getting people from the other side to support you. Something that someone pointed out in the comments, New Hampshire and Iowa polls have Yang as highest percentage of Trumpers, Republicans choosing Yang over Trump. So yeah, we have some polls coming out in head-to-head contest, Yang versus Trump. Yang has the highest, and you can actually see some of that in a website that I want to plug. I reference this website quite a lot. The website is called canandrewyangwin.com. Let me pull it up real quick here. Here we go. I'm gonna do the browser. Transition. All right.
Wow, you're really fast at that transition.
Yeah. All right. So you guys hopefully can see that. Yeah. So if you go to canandrewyangwin.com, it actually gives some direct data or some resources that you can show other people to show why Andrew Yang will win in the general election. And one of the biggest resources is the betting markets. The betting markets show Yang having the highest chance of winning in the general election in a head-to-head contest. And this type of graph you don't see very often at this stage of the election, because obviously everyone's focused on who would win among the existing Democrats. But this is a very future forward-looking set of data, because this is looking ahead to say, if Yang won, how would he do against Trump? And with that question, Yang is a very clear winner.
Also, I think it's worth bringing up, especially since the impeachment vote is this Wednesday, that when we're looking at who has a better opportunity to beat Trump, Yang or Biden, it's important to remember that for Republicans, Biden is a central player in this impeachment, in the whole impeachment process, because of Hunter Biden and his involvement in Ukraine, and all of the sort of nepotism that happened within the Biden family. And so when you're saying, well, maybe Biden could beat Trump, you are not getting any fully Trump supporters to that side, because when they see the impeachment, they see it as Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are getting away from their crime and trying to push the criminal accusation onto Donald Trump. And Andrew Yang does not come with that connotation, because he's not an establishment Democrat and he's not Joe Biden. And so when you're answering that question, you can also bring up, people are not going to forget this impeachment, and the people who are Trump supporters are not going to forget this impeachment, and they're especially not going to forget how they saw Joe Biden during the whole process.
Awesome. All right. So shall we move on to the second thing? Yes. Which is talk about the economy next?
Yeah. That's pretty
All right. So the economy. Why is Andrew Yang better for the economy than Joe Biden?
Well, let's talk a little bit about their plans. I'm sure we all know that Andrew Yang has a very simple economic plan called the Freedom Dividend, which, if you're not aware, is $1,000 a month in the hands of every adult American over the age of 18. And the long-lasting beneficial effects to this, one Google search, it'll already auto-populate and tell you how many jobs it will bring, how much it will grow the economy, and just frankly be like an adrenaline shot right into the American economy and workforce. Joe Biden's plan is a little different. He kind of spins it in a different way. His economic plan is called Invest in Middle Class Competitiveness, which is kind of a misnomer because it's all about infrastructure. And Joe Biden actually has a very comprehensive and good infrastructure plan that creates good union jobs, makes sure everything is green, and invests billions of dollars into electric vehicles, and also transit projects that through the United States train system, and also transit projects from high poverty areas to jobs where they would be able to work. But again, this is a great infrastructure policy. I think it's sort of strange he puts it under economic policies. And I think it's even stranger that his policy fits well into any other candidate's infrastructure policies, but he doesn't necessarily address the economy head on the way that Andrew Yang does, for instance. Do you have anything?
Yeah, and so... and by the way, Kennedy put these notes together, and so I think it's really good that we put them side by side. And I think one thing that's worth noting is that Joe Biden doesn't really have a very solid like jobs or new way forward for Americans. He has an infrastructure plan, and it's not a bad infrastructure plan, right?
It's very. I mean, it's comprehensive. It's affordable. It's a good infrastructure plan, and
right.
he agrees to work with community colleges and other like preset agreements.
Right. Now, Yang, on the other hand, also has an infrastructure plan.
Yes.
And so he's not treating it, we fix the economy by fixing infrastructure. He has a completely separate infrastructure plan, which is on the website, yang2020.com. Just search infrastructure. We've done a workshop on this. I think it's on,
so.
Yeah, you check back the YouTube channel, look at our discussion on that. But, once again, it comes I feel like it's going to be a recurring theme. I know that, this is supposed to be Biden specific. But, in this particular case, he has a good infrastructure plan. He doesn't truly have a new way forward for the economy that Yang has. And something that speaks to the other candidates as well. When I talk to Warren supporters and Sanders supporters, they all talk about finding a candidate who will fundamentally change how the economy works, and with the fundamental change, core change. And I think what's more fundamental change than a freedom dividend, where the economic growth that people are feeling at the top are also shared and experienced by everybody, whether you're at the top or the bottom. And so, so that's something that's I think that's a big key point, is that Biden doesn't really have an economic plan. He has an infrastructure plan that he's selling as an economic plan. But in the case of tying it into what we just talked about, doesn't really solve a lot of the problems that we're going to be facing over the next 10 years.
No, and again, it's strange to me that Biden, who was in the Obama administration, would know all these numbers about jobs being automated and a third of American jobs being automated away by 2025, and then in his economic infrastructure Frankenstein together plan, his number one thing is to create good union jobs for expanding the middle class. And these are mostly like blue collar construction jobs that again will be automated away very soon. In fact, within the next 5 years. And the rest of his policy plans for investing in middle class competitiveness are over 5 years or 10 years. And so he's trying to put in these long-term solutions, but he's not thinking about a long-term economy or a long-term world. He's thinking like, what would we do if this was the economy for the next 5 years? And it just doesn't address how quickly things can change and how they can change, especially with automation on the table.
Right. So, shall we put this into Q&A form?
Yeah.
All right, stall for me while I pull up our little Q&A window. We are answering the question. We are changing the question up. You're on camera, by the way.
Oh, I'm on camera?
Sorry.
Thank you to all the nice comments that are going on in the YouTube channel.
Why is Andrew Yang better for the economy?
Who do you think's gonna win the Super Bowl?
I have no idea. Full disclosure, I am not a big... not to generate any more hate on us or anything, but... I'm not even that big of a Dallas Cowboys fan, but only when a Texas team is doing well do I care about football.
My brother's a Chiefs fan, so I'll say go Chiefs, I guess.
Okay. All right. Why is Andrew Yang better for the economy than Joe Biden? Ladies first?
No, I'll let you go first. All right, Hexel, why is Andrew Yang better for the economy than Joe Biden?
Well, Joe Biden and Andrew Yang both have infrastructure. Well, sorry.
Wow, you want to mulligan on that? Yeah.
Mulligan.
Right.
I tripped over my words.
Who has, between Biden and Yang, who will do better for the American economy?
Well, if you go on Biden and Yang's respective websites, Yang has a plan for the economy on yang2020.com. Biden also has a plan for the economy on his website. But when you look at his plan and compare to what Yang wants to do, Biden essentially has an infrastructure plan. And it's not a bad infrastructure plan. But the truth is, Yang also has an infrastructure plan, but Yang's plan actually solves the problems that we're going to be facing over the next 10 years. Automation is going to replace a third of all jobs by 2030. And we also have a lot of work that's not being valued by the market, like the work of caregivers, the work of volunteers, the work of people who work in nonprofits or start businesses. And so Yang's plan of a freedom dividend would create over 4 million new jobs and increase GDP by $2 trillion over a short period of time. And so his policies actually address the economy of the future. Biden's doesn't.
That's very good, I think. That was a top quality answer. That was a grade A USDA American beef answer right there. That was good.
Thank you. I think one thing we haven't talked about yet is that we have to broaden what we think about as what's good for the economy. Because I think we focus a whole lot on like the number of jobs, but I think when these job numbers are employed jobs, like you have someone who's on the payroll of someone else. And so when we think about what we need to do to improve the economy, we also have to think about these things that are not valued by the market, like the work of caregivers, or the work of nonprofits, or the work of volunteers, or the work of people in the arts. There's so much work that's so undervalued, and going into the next chapter of this economy, we have to think about all lines of work, not just the ones that the GDP is currently measuring.
I think that's a very good point. And actually, when you time me for my question, I'm gonna go a little off script here because to give you an idea. Is
Okay.
that I'm gonna tie in Andrew Yang's changing the American scorecard policy and see if this might.
Okay, yeah. Fundamental change.
Fundamental change.
Yeah. Which is something that I don't think Biden people talk a lot about fundamental change, but it is something that Warren people and Sanders people talk about a lot. All right, ready?
Yes.
Kennedy, why is Andrew Yang better for the economy than Joe Biden?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. First of all, I would point to their respective websites. Yang2020.com is where you can find all of Yang's policies. I'd text Joe to 30330 to learn about him. So the thing about the economy is that we're in an ever-shifting landscape as far as economic freedom and economic policy, not just globally, but nationally. And so we have all of these changing markets, and especially with the threat of automation, that will get rid of 1/3 of all American jobs by 2025, which is actually a number that comes from the Obama administration that Joe Biden worked with. We need to look forwards to the future, and we need to stop putting all our ducks in the basket of things like GDP, how the stocks are doing, and instead we need to look at things like suicide rates, how healthy the average American is, how many people are underemployed or unemployed. And these things are all things that Andrew Yang offers in a very comprehensive economic plan that would go hand in hand with his freedom dividend, which would single-handedly eradicate poverty in America by putting $1,000 a month in the hands of every American. Blech. I made some bold claims at the end because I was running out of time, but sometimes you have to end with a...
And with a good zinger.
Yes, end with a zinger.
Yeah. This conversation has me thinking, I want to throw in an extra question here, because the question I get a lot talking to Trump supporters. And I know this is supposed to be a Biden v. Yang thing, but I feel like it speaks to the general election. Anyways, the question is, and I'm going to start typing it while I say it.
Oh, also, if you are watching this and you want us to answer a question, or if you've had this question asked you 10 times on Twitter and you just weren't sure how to answer it, go ahead and type it in and send it, and we can answer it for you to the best of our abilities, to the best of my abilities. We appreciate all of you for watching. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Sunday where it's a nice 75 degrees in Dallas. I called my dad this morning. I think it's like 50 degrees in Nebraska or something like that. Sucks. Sucks to be y'all. Waiting on some typing.
Okay, sorry, that's a long question.
No, you're
fine. But that's a question you've received before too, right?
Why would someone running on fixing the economy when it's doing so well right now? I have a spicy answer for this, so you might want to go first.
My grammar is weird, sorry. Why would someone running on fixing the economy
Why would someone
when it's doing so well right now?
Okay.
Right? So so Andrew Yang is all about we got to do this, we got to do that for the economy, and really everyone on the Democratic side is saying the economy is not doing well. But when we get into general election mode, as well as if you try to yang people on the right, maybe right of center, maybe libertarians or independents, who are looking around saying GDP is doing great. We're trying to build a broad tent and bring people into, the Yang Gang, or maybe more amiably bring people into the Democratic Party, or however you want to think about it. We want to reach out to these people now, even in the primary. So how do we answer this question? How would you answer this question?
Well, I actually have a spicier way of answering this. Is a lot of people will say the economy is doing so well right now. Look at GDP, and I always say, what does that mean? And people will say, well, it means the gross domestic product. And I'm like, okay, what does it mean? Like, what is the gross domestic product?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it mean we're doing good? And then when you start to talk to people and say, well, it just means how much the average American is making on average, you start to get into like, well, that's just a point. And there's this whole thing about the Simpsons paradox. But when you really start
Simpsons paradox.
Yeah, so... very briefly, Simpsons paradox is when like you have an average of an average, and that basically means nothing. It's like you found a point. It shouldn't be really used for data, and that's why we have trouble correlating video games with violence, is because people are using Simpsons paradox. And also that GDP is only tied in because of an accident that happened in World War II. And so when people ask, the economy is so good, I typically say, don't look at the numbers, look around you. Look at the businesses that are closing. Look at how many, people... You say you don't want to pay your taxes because you don't have enough income. Look at how low the wages are. Look at how productivity has risen 100% and wages haven't risen at all in ever since the 80s. And so I typically try to say, don't look at what you're being told, look around you. And that, a lot of times people start to say, maybe the economy isn't doing well. Maybe we're not rewarding the things we should be rewarding in today's nationally when we look at policies.
Right, and I pulled something up on the screen just now for you to support what you're talking about. Over 9,300 stores closed in 2019. They call it the retail apocalypse. And so we talk about this a lot, that when you go into these stores, yeah, you're right. Like there's more data than the headlines show, and you can see that data if you dig deeper, but you can also see that data by just looking around.
Yeah.
You have self-service kiosks in McDonald's, you have self-driving trucks, you have radiologist jobs are being replaced. The number I always throw around is that over 9,000 stores were closed in 2019 alone. And the trend of how many stores closed keeps going up and up. I mean, I can, depending on where you live, you can point to examples in your community like JCPenney or Payless Shoes.
Actually, I lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, which has a huge mall in the center of it. It's like a very typical, like 200,000, like medium-sized Midwest town. That's pretty big. And I went back like a couple months ago, and I looked around and I started realizing, like, oh my gosh, that store was there since I was born. It's closed now. That mall is like closed now. It's it's going to be torn down. And so really, if you have people just say, like, think of all the stores that have been closed down in the last 5 years, they'll start counting, and that number gets really high really fast.
Yeah.
So.
All right, do we want to turn this into a
question?
60-second Q&A
yes.
edition? All right.
You go first. I will go second.
All right, hold up. Let me pull up my little frame here. Thank you for all the people making nice comments in the live chat. We are reading them.
Okay, ready?
Wait, are we going first?
Yeah, you're going first.
Okay.
So, why would someone running on fixing the economy win when the economy is doing so well right now, Hexel?
Well, the truth is, our current means of measuring the economy is leading us off a cliff. If you go to yang2020.com and check out our policy page on human-centered capitalism, we need to change the way that we measure the economy. Because while GDP and the stock market are at record highs, so are suicide, so are depression, drug overdoses, student debt, workforce participation is at a multi-decade low. And if you talk to the 4 million workers who lost their manufacturing jobs since 2000, the vast majority of them did not re-enter the workplace. Donald Trump won because his slogan was "Make America Great Again," and the Democratic response was, "It's already great." And people voted the truth, which was that they are feeling this pain, and Trump got credit and therefore won. So we need someone who's going to change the way we measure the economy and solve the problems that got Trump elected in the first place.
Wow, that was great. Exactly 1 minute.
Yeah, exactly 60 seconds.
Exactly 60 seconds.
Did I touch on the important points in that one?
I think that's it. I won't even answer this one.
No. You gotta answer.
That was just frankly so good.
Well, you should give it a try, and who knows, you might actually stumble upon something. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, wait.
Or did you get my alarms up instead?
Well, yeah.
There you go.
All right, Kennedy.
Yes.
I know in the camera I'm looking like the opposite direction.
Yeah, we're looking like opposite ways.
But Kennedy, why would someone like Andrew Yang win running on fixing the economy when the economy is already doing really well?
Well, first of all, I would implore you to look at yang2020.com to see what his plan is and why he actually has it in place. And one of the specific policies that I think would be great for you to look at is changing the American scorecard. So we have record high GDP, record high stock market prices, but we also have record high suicide rates, drug overdoses. There are more opioid prescriptions than there are people in Ohio. And so if we actually look at what's going on economically, not just economically, but for the people in our nation, we are suffering, and we are suffering a lot. And so if we start to look at all the stores closing, how many jobs have been lost, we can see why Donald Trump was elected, not because the economy is doing great, but because the economy is doing so bad and that people want someone to change and come in and make it better. And so Andrew Yang is literally running on giving people money, which is an adrenaline shot into the economy that would help people start to feel better about their place and not elect wackos that they think can change the economy to work better for them. Okay, there you go.
Not bad. I like the Ohio example.
Yes.
I did not remember that statistic, but that's a very powerful example. And I also like that you pointed out the American scorecard, because I think he has them as two separate policy pages.
Yes.
They're kind of the same thing. I would say it's one of those things. Yang campaign, if you're listening, maybe consider consolidating those two.
Yes. Yang watches all of our streams, obviously.
Yeah. But yeah, American scorecard, human-centered capitalism are actually kind of the same policy. And so if you point to either one of those, you'll get the
Oh,
gist
we
of
do
it.
actually have a question.
Sure.
Pudget Sound Comedy says, why should I put my support behind Yang when the mainstream media is saying he doesn't have a chance at winning the nomination? Am I wasting your vote?
Oh, that's a good question. So, want to put this on the screen, actually?
Yeah.
Let me put that one on.
Let me
stall for
think on
time
this.
while I...
Okay, stall for time.
I put it up.
I tap danced for like 5 years when I was a kiddo. So if I still had tap shoes, you could all have some sort of dancing. I'm trying to think. That's a really good question, actually.
Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot to say. But it's hard one to wrap into a nice 60-second little thing. Okay, here's what I would say. First of all, the media was saying Trump would lose, and he won. They were saying he was going to lose in in the primaries, and it said that he was going to lose in the general. But what we ended up seeing was actually, I'm going to pull up that website again because I think it has a fact on this. I'm not sure.
That would be my short answer, though, is to say that, well, nobody thought Trump would win because the mainstream media and polling put
Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm going to try to pull up the website real quick. Well, super duper quick, because it has it here. All right, so if you look at this website... Oh, I know it's a little janky because the browser is off to the site. Well, let me see if I can fix that. There we go. All right, so if you see in the bottom, 2016 election, Republican primaries. Let me try zooming in for you guys. On June 11, 2015... Trump was in 7th place, and in 1 week, he leapt from 7th place to 1st place in a 7-day period. And so that goes to show how even if someone doesn't appear to be winning right now, anything can happen where suddenly it just, as Yang would say, would peak at the right time. So if someone as awful of a candidate can suddenly go from 7th to 1st, and Yang is currently at 4th or 5th, then there's no reason to think that he can't suddenly win. And the other thing to point out is that a lot of candidates have gone on to win the primaries and the generals, polling at what Yang is polling at right now. Jimmy Carter was polling around this place. Bill Clinton lost in Iowa. So there's a first for everything, but even this isn't really the first. There is a precedent for people coming up from the bottom, or not again, and he's not even at the bottom. Something that Yang says a lot on the trail is what's more likely, to go from 4th place to winning, or to go from no one knowing who he was to being where he is now. If you haven't seen it already, longer than long shot Andrew Yang. If you haven't seen this video yet, I definitely recommend checking it out. It was released by the campaign within the last. I'm not gonna play it here, but I definitely recommend people check it out when they get the chance. But this video really shows how far we've come. And if you look at how far we've come, where, he was just this one, like him, Zach, Carly in a rented van, to now, then if we could do that, there's no reason we can't win. So there's data. Trump jumped from 7th place to 1st place in 7-day period. There's a precedent. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton also won despite polling similarly to Yang now. And there's momentum. I mean, you just look how far we've come, and all we have to do is keep doing it.
I think also, when we're answering these questions, these are questions that we get while we're phone banking, text banking, or canvassing. And so if these are the questions you're getting when you're out canvassing, all you need to do is say, like, well, we're here. Like, you have Yang supporters right in front of you. You're being told that this is just an online, a botted campaign, but like, here we are, we're canvassing for him, we're phone banking for him, we're text banking for him. And so that's, part of it too, is just saying, like, well, look in front of you. We're right here, and we're ready to take this man all the way to the top, to the White House. Right.
And another data point that, let me try to find it online real quick, is Andrew Yang has the most committed supporters. And Bill Clinton was interviewed recently, and he said that the thing that matters more than polling is energy on the ground. And so let me see if I can find that has most committed supporters.
And again, this is all in the frame of Biden. And so when you're asking that question, I'm assuming you're saying, like, well, Biden is polling like really high in polls. And again, I would say you can poll very high with name recognition, but name recognition will not mean much when you're the Democratic nominee, because anyone will have that name recognition if they win. And so the fact that Biden is polling high right now, I think, just speaks to people knowing who he is, but not necessarily that he could win or that he should win.
Yeah. And again, pointing this back to Biden, I don't know why it's loading so slowly, but Andrew Yang has 72% commitment from his supporters, which means that 72% of Yang supporters will not change as the race progresses. Versus, if it will just load, versus other candidates are much lower. And so again, like, if you're talking to a Biden supporter, ask them, do you see Biden supporters having the same energy that you're seeing in front of you right now? So yeah, you can see if you can compare definitely voting for Yang versus definitely voting for Biden. I mean, he even has a higher ratio than all the other candidates. You can see here, like, this is actually back when Harris was still in the race. And look at Buttigieg and Warren. They are more likely to change than any of the other candidates. And so, especially, when you're talking about Biden, or really anybody else, you can ask them, honestly, does Biden's supporters have the same zeal and energy that Yang supporters have? Do you see them on the ground?
Do you see them trending on Twitter?
And also, speaking of Twitter, do you honestly think that, I know this sounds very mean, but it's something that Yang says too. It's like, do you honestly believe that Joe Biden understands the technology of the 21st century? And so, yeah, there's a whole lot to unpack there. But basically, you can see it around you that Biden simply doesn't have the energy that Yang does. And also, I think the last thing I'd point out to the person who asked about why support Yang is, this is also definitely in as much as there's a lot of data, this is also self-fulfilling prophecy territory, where the more people who think that it's not worth supporting Yang, then the less chance he has, versus the more people who just make the conscious decision that he can win. It's self-fulfilling. So it's because it's going to be true wherever you go. If you honestly believe that Biden can win and you support his campaign, then you are answering the question for yourself. And the same thing for Sanders, for Warren, and I think especially so for Yang.
Okay, ready to talk about healthcare? Everyone's favorite.
Yes, everyone's. I will say we won't go into the topic of healthcare as deeply as the other things, but I think it's worth pointing out. I think we've touched on the big stuff that people ask about.
Yeah.
Healthcare is kind of a beast of a topic.
So,
what do you want to say about?
I will say Andrew Yang. We have a whole video, I think, on his healthcare policy. It's very long. Took me forever to get through and have it into snippets. He has 6 major policies. I'll run through them really quick. He would control the cost of life-saving drugs, invest in new technology, change the incentive structures, shift their focus on preventative and end-of-life care measures, full comprehensive care, which is things like care for those with disabilities, mental health, and then finally diminish lobbyist influence. And all of those things have immense amounts of data and policy proposals to back them up, but those are the big 6. Biden's plan is a lot more about Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. So mainly, the overview of Biden's is like, he saw how hard it was to get Obamacare passed. He saw how hard it was to get the Affordable Care Act passed, and he has seen every day it come under attack and scrutiny, and people have tried to repeal it, to change it. And so his focus is on solidifying Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, and then building on it. So, offering a public option, decreasing income tax or increasing tax credits on income tax, prohibiting price inflation. And he actually does have policies that match up with Andrew Yang's healthcare plan and even Sanders. For instance, Yang, Sanders, and Biden all want to allow Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices. And I think all 3 of them want to cover primary care with no co-payments. I could be wrong on that. And all 3 of them suggest similar things to curbing price inflation and allowing contraceptives and protecting constitutional right to abortion. And so they do have a lot of similarities. Where it comes into play is a lot of implementation and like new technologies or new policies. Do you have anything to say on that?
No, I guess well, the main thing I would add to that is one thing I try to steer away from. Full disclosure, if I'm being completely honest for myself, healthcare is not my strongest area to discuss. I think a lot of people, like, unless you're in the medical field, my opinion doesn't carry a whole lot of weight. But what I do generally approach on this topic is, when it comes to healthcare, you have Sanders has a bill that he's pushed already. Warren has her own philosophy, and the thing with these other candidates is that they're still going to be around.
In the Senate.
Yeah, in the Senate. Even if whether they win or lose, they're going to be around to push their healthcare agendas. And so we don't have a whole lot to lose or risk if they don't win the presidency, right? Because they'll still be available and around to push their legislative agendas. Yang, on the other hand, he's proposing things that are not addressed as critically as in other platforms. Stuff like, basically the 6 things he's listed: investing in new technology, controlling the cost of life-saving drugs, changing the incentive structure, shifting our focus on preventive and end-of-life care. Those are things that are not dived into as deeply by the other candidates. And so we might not lose the other candidates' plans if they're not president. But if we don't support Yang, there's a chance that we will lose out on these 6 things that he's bringing attention to. Because look at the first one, for example, the second one: invest in new technologies. If we take it for granted that the other candidates don't truly understand technology, at least how it operates in 21st century economy and healthcare, then what are the odds that they're going to do something about it in their own plans?
And I will say that there is a lot of Yang stuff that is things as simple as investing in new technology, doing multi-state licensing for doctors. It's not it would not be a hard sell. And that's kind of one of the things that Biden says in his plan is that he's seen how hard it is to pass comprehensive healthcare legislation, but multi-state licensing and that kind of thing is very easy, and it would get a lot more bipartisan support. And be easier to pass than some of the other complete overhaul bills. Right.
And I'll say that multi-state licensing, something that Yang supports, is something that even people on the Republican side want. It's something that I've heard Trump supporters talk about this. I think Trump has mentioned multi-state licensing. Has he done it? No, but
he's mentioned it.
But he's it's things that we can actually make happen. And I think whether it can happen or not, I think part of the value of electing someone as president is that whatever big ideas they have more weight and leverage than if they were, a senator or a congressman. So, and so I realized that that's like something, well, that's why we wanted to support Sanders or Warren. But like I said before, these are big ideas that Yang is proposing. If we don't take this opportunity to get him in the White House, we're not going to be able to get those things. We might not be able to get those things. Versus if Sanders or Warren isn't president, they still have an opportunity to push their agendas forward. And so the main thing I want to avoid is creating this one or the other. Like, I don't want people to think that they have to choose based on whose healthcare plan is better. When no matter who's president, when it comes time to legislate, all of these details are going to be once again rehashed. There's going to be interest groups plugging in the things that they want to see. And so it's the biggest question to me is, does this person understand what we need? And does this person propose ideas that nobody else is talking about?
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think also when you're talking to Biden supporters and trying to get them to come over to Yang's side, I think it's important to say Yang wants a lot of things that Biden does. They have similar healthcare policies, and neither of them have the Bernie Sanders Medicare for All bill that they've included within their policies, but both of them say that they would like a public option or to bring costs down. And so people support Biden because they don't like Medicare for All, and they prefer a public option. It's scary to them to have to reformat 18% of the economy to fit a Medicare for All. It's scary for them to think about getting kicked off their insurance. So that's part of the appeal to Biden, is that everyone would get health insurance, and no one would have to pay like all the taxes that people are scared of paying under Sanders. And Yang has a similar draw of like, we're not just making everything level and having you only be on government Medicare. We have other ways of doing this, of bringing costs down and stuff like that. All right.
So I think the last thing I'll add is, like, if I'm being completely honest, I think it's fair to say that healthcare is not Andrew Yang's strongest. I mean, you can't win them all. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad at all. And then I'm still standing strongly on the stance that he is addressing things that other candidates aren't addressing. But I make the point that it's not his strongest position or his strongest plank, because there are other things that you can focus on.
It's a hard issue because people are very polarized about it.
Yeah.
And Yang's plan is looking at it in a direction that no one else is. And so people are usually just like, who pays for insurance?
Right.
How does insurance work? And Yang kind of like is like, let's not pay attention to that, and let's pay attention to more of what's behind the insurance.
Yeah. And so I think the part that makes it difficult to talk about Yang's plan is there are specific questions that people ask. And let me simplify things a little bit more. If you find yourself talking to someone, whether it's a Biden supporter or anyone else, supporter of any other candidate, and they bring up the topic of healthcare, you could use some of the stuff we've talked about. So I definitely encourage you to use the talking points of things that he's addressing that other people aren't, similarities between the two. But at the end of the day, what you should always do is refer to the website, encourage them to go to yang2020.com and read Yang's healthcare plan for themselves. And don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Well, I mean, that's true of all questions. Like if they bring up like infrastructure or education, don't be afraid to just say, I don't know all the details on that, but there's absolutely a policy page on yang2020.com that you can check out. And I say this specifically for healthcare because it's a very tricky topic. It's very easy to get tripped up on this one. Definitely take what we say with a grain of salt. But ultimately, what you should always do in every case is point to the website. And a lot of times, what people really care about is that he has a plan.
Yeah.
I think that's something it's something we've talked about in other topics, like for example, how do you pay for the freedom dividend? Well, fortunately, if you practice, it's very easy to give an answer to that. But 90% of the time when people ask how do you pay for the freedom dividend, all they really want to know is that you have an answer as a volunteer. Because if volunteers have an answer for these questions, that means it's important enough to the campaign to educate their volunteers. So as long as you have an answer, and as long as you can demonstrate that Yang has a plan, then you don't have to stress out about memorizing all the details or having like good zingers in your back pocket.
Okay, speaking of zingers, do you have a 60-second
Speaking of zingers,
zinger?
let's do this. All right, shall we?
Yes.
All right, go
So,
for it.
Hexel, how does Andrew Yang compare to Biden as far as healthcare goes?
So if you go to yang2020.com, you can check out Andrew Yang's full healthcare plan, how he wants to invest in new technologies and expand coverage to more people, bring down the cost of drugs through competitive negotiations, and provide full comprehensive care, including long-term care. Ultimately, you'll want to check out his websites for more details. The number one thing that I want to emphasize is that Yang addresses things in his plan that other candidates don't spend a lot of time thinking about or talking about. And I don't want you to feel like you have to choose between one person's healthcare plan over another, because you might like things in Warren's plan or Sanders' plan, and they'll be around. But what we risk by not supporting Yang is not supporting these advancements and focuses that he addresses the other candidates aren't.
Okay, I think that's a very good answer.
Yeah. It's not the best answer, but it's something. Key thing, always point them to the website, always direct them to check out the healthcare plan for themselves. I mean, Medicare for All is a landmine, because it's literally 50-50. If you say Andrew Yang supports Medicare for All, it's literally 50-50 whether or not they'll take that as a good thing or as a good thing or a bad thing. So you definitely want to let the website speak for itself. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in the comments that we want to do?
I don't
We're
think so.
almost
I
at the
think
1
we're all
hour
good.
mark.
So yeah, probably wrap it up here then.
Yeah, okay. So thank you for everyone who joined in the chat. This has been our weekly Andrew Yang policy workshop. We will be having more of these every week, focusing on specifics around specific candidates. So we did Biden this week. What are we doing next time?
Next week, actually, we're going to be talking about like delegates and the Iowa caucuses are tomorrow, and so I think we'll probably talk a little bit about the caucuses, what happens next in the primary process, and like what a delegate is, what a super delegate is, kind of all about that.
Right.
But then after that, I think it's Sanders.
So if you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, here are some things that are coming up. Hold on, get my camera. All right, so the Dallas Yang Gang meets every Saturday, 10 o'clock a.m. at La La Land Kind Cafe. This week at their coffee social, we will be talking about how to become a delegate. We will be having a special guest joining us from the local Dallas County Democratic Party, speak to us about that process. If you want to become a delegate, then you can become a delegate for the Andrew Yang campaign. Do you know what website people go to for that?
We're just going to have to come to the coffee social.
You're just going to have to come to the coffee social.
Or watch this policy.
Or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. We will be sharing this info.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. Hit that share button. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Dallas Yang Gang meets every Saturday, 10 a.m. Denton Yang Gang meets every Monday, 7 o'clock p.m. at Jupiter House Coffee. Yeah, I can see them all right here. As well as on our website, dfwforyang.org. And then just click events and you'll see everything on Mobilize. That's it. Anything else you want to add?
We are going canvassing this Saturday at 12:30 at Glencoe Park. You can find us on Twitter, message us on Facebook or Instagram, go on Mobilize. We're canvassing, and we need to be canvassing because Texas is a Super Tuesday state, which means we vote on March 3rd. And yes, come canvass.
Yeah, they have less than 30 days. Also, if you would like to join these discussions in person, then you are actually more than welcome to join us. We used to have this in a public place at this tea house. we moved it to Kennedy, to someone's home. I don't want
it's my condo.
We moved to Kennedy's condo. So everyone is actually more than welcome to join us. It's just that we don't want to put Kennedy's home address.
Actually, I have it set up that if you go to Mobilize and you sign up, it'll give you like my address. But if you go to Mobilize, then it has a way there that you can figure out how to get here.
Yeah. So you have to RSVP to join us.
Yes.
Let's put it that way. We don't want just random strangers knowing
my address.
Private residence. But we do want you here to, participate in discussions. So go to dfwforyang.org/events to sign up for our next one. And we hope to see you there. All right, Kennedy.
Bye.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Mm-hmm.
Peace. Go Yang Gang.
Go Yang Gang.